Hey guys, and welcome back to Back Beyond Tech's weekly program.net. It's episode 2. So this week we're going to talk about Ryzen. It's going to be a slightly different kind of show this week. Not going to have tons of graphs and things like that to show. Simply going to talk about Ryzen from what I've watched over the last sort of 5 days now since it's launched, and there's a couple of things I'm going to deal with initially, just to clear up some misunderstandings that seem to be happening online at the moment, in my view anyway. So like I said, it's not really going to be going through lots of stories. We're just going to talk about Ryzen. Obviously, the 1080 Ti was announced last week, but we all expected that. That's not a surprise. And to be honest, I think in the tech world, it's largely overshadowed by AMD launching a brand new microarchitecture, which I think has caused a lot of problems in the tech world. Not many people are used to reviewing brand new products. I mean, we're used to reviewing iterations of what Intel brings us every year, every 2 years, and I think that's led to quite a lot of I would say misunderstandings about the product and the expectation that people had, etc., etc. But anyway, I would really like this to be more you asking me questions and me answering them, or I want to know what your opinion is, basically, because straight off the bat, I'm going to talk about Intel. So, lots of outlets out there, outlets that I, in the past, have thought were pretty good, were getting better, have talked about Intel lowering prices. So the first thing I'm going to look at is this is live. So this is ARC, so it's Intel's website that basically lists every single processor they've made. It also lists the MSRP for such things. So i7 lineup, the seventh generation lineup here. So we're looking at Kaby Lake. Yeah, Intel haven't lowered their prices, guys. Now, independent retailers might have lowered their prices, but Intel haven't lowered their prices no matter what anyone says. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to go down that road. We've seen a lot of kind of name calling, and I'll talk about that in a minute in the tech world. But retailers have lowered prices on 6th and 7th generation Intel products in response to Ryzen being released, basically. But you can look at this website. Intel have not lowered their prices. So 7700K still costs between $339 and $350 according to Intel. That's the price when they ship it that they tell retailers to sell it for. Okay, so Intel, straight off the bat, let's get that out of the way. Intel have not lowered prices. They have not made an announcement about lowering prices. They have not made really a direct announcement at all in regards to Zen. So that's something I wanted to get out of the way straight away. The second point I wanted to bring up was over the past 5 days. I mean, I've watched a lot of the well, I've pretty much covered all of the Ryzen stuff because I'm very interested in Ryzen. Although I'm not buying an 8-core, I am going to be buying a 6-core. So I wanted to know as much as I could early on, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Now, a lot of people in the tech world, I feel their launch day reviews, bar probably one or two, I would say I felt quite disappointed in. And if you agree with me, put a comment in the chat because I really want this to be a back and forth thing. So, with the exception of, I would say, on YouTube specifically, with the exception of Gamers Nexus, I don't think there was really a review of Ryzen. There were people that made videos about Ryzen builds they'd done, and they basically benchmarked it in quite a limited fashion against Intel chips, which is fine. That's what we all expected them to do. AMD have themselves to blame for that. They made a big deal about Ryzen up against Broadwell, so obviously people were gonna benchmark it against Skylake and Kaby Lake because there's a lot of gamers out there. Gamers have been waiting for this. AMD kind of push this towards gamers, although I don't think the R7 chip is really a gaming chip. We'll get onto that in a minute. But largely with the exception of Gamers Nexus, I felt slightly let down by the content that YouTubers were putting out there. if you haven't seen Gamer's Nexus video, we're going to look at his article in a minute. In fact, I'll bring it up just now. Where are we? There we go. Yeah, so I brought his article up just now. If you haven't seen that video and you haven't read this article, you should check it out, guys. This is how a review of a new product should be done. And I know a lot of people didn't have a lot of time, in which case maybe they should have held back on the review. I mean, is there any benefit in being first out of the gate if what you're producing and publishing isn't exactly what you wanted? I mean, for instance, Jay's 2 cents. I'm not a massive fan, but the man was true to himself, and he released a video today of the Ryzen build he did and the benchmarking he did, and he specifically did not look at it against Intel chips because it's a brand new microarchitecture, it's brand new BIOSes, everything is brand new, so there are going to be issues. And I actually liked the way he did his video about Ryzen. And it was, 4 days, 5 days after the event. Does it make it less valuable? No, not really. If anything, I felt that was one of the better videos that come out about Ryzen from a YouTuber. Like I said, with the exception of Gamer's Nexus. Gamer's Nexus video was fantastic. It's only 20 minutes long. It's well worth watching it. It goes into a lot of detail about the issues with Ryzen at the moment. It does a lot of benchmarking, games, productivity, talks about the issues with measuring temperatures correctly on Ryzen and just in general with AMD because of the way they measure their T-junction temperature. It's an offset algorithm rather than a direct measurement. So I think there's a lot of information in this article that you should go away and read and digest before you start forming an opinion on Ryzen, I think. Because there was initial kind of outcry, I feel, in the tech world about Ryzen just not living up to the hype. And as far as I can see, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. The R7 lineup is a server chip wrapped up and sold to the consumer. What it does is it takes that 8-core 16-thread power that you would have got, say, in a Xeon or a year or two old Xeon or something like that, and it gives it to you, the consumer, at a reasonable price. Now, it addresses the problem with Intel's pricing. We all know their Broadwell E 8-core part is $1,000. So not many people are going to go out and spend $1,000 on a consumer chip. You don't really need to. Which is why I think the 6-core parts like 6800K, 5820K, etc. They were so appealing to people like myself, content creators, and people who do a bit more with their PCs and just play games. Either that, or you did what I used to do, which is buy a Xeon, and then the problem with that is you've got to find a motherboard that'll support it, that's still working, ECC memory and things like that. So yeah, in my view, the R7 1800X, 1700X, 1700 are very, very good products. Okay, they're really, really good, but they are server grade components that are being sold to the consumer, and that's not a bad thing. But I think we should get away from this idea that they're made for gamers. They're not made for gamers. They're made for consumers. And if you want to have a chip that will let you do more than game, and it's not going to hold you back in gaming. I mean, the offsets people are seeing between Ryzen, especially at 1080p, and say Skylake or Kaby Lake, is maybe the Ryzen chip's getting 110, 115 frames, and say the Skylake Kaby Lake chip's getting maybe 15 frames more than that. So there's been a lot of discussion about that, and also because different YouTubers have gotten different results and similar benchmarks, etc., etc. To the point that today, a certain YouTuber released a video about another YouTuber, and I mean that video, I was quite surprised. I'm not going to say who it came from. You've probably seen it if you keep up to date. I mean, I was really surprised. This guy basically all out attacks this other reviewer, and in Scotland, we would basically say he's basically calling him a cunt, and that surprised me as well. Just the amount of kind of open, just I think he even used the phrase that this person shouldn't be doing tech reviews because there were some discrepancies in results. Now, I kind of get where he's coming from, but also everyone, the internet has been alive with the fact that Ryzen gives you such varied benchmarks depending on what chip you've got, what overclock you can get it to, what BIOS you're running. Never mind what board you're running. A lot of these boards were sent out with, you know, not even the not even the consumer revision BIOS. I mean, up to like a day before the NDA was lifted, AMD were emailing reviewers and telling them to upgrade their BIOS and test like this and don't test like that. And so I was quite surprised at this tech tuber kind of all out attacking someone else so openly. Like I say, I'm not going to name names. It's pretty obvious who it is. If you're into YouTube and you're into technology, you're gonna know who it is. I mean, I watched it today. I watched this guy's videos a lot. I actually respect him quite a lot. I think he's very good. But I was quite surprised to see him basically just produce a video to do no more than attack someone else in the community, which is quite shocking. Guys, if you've got comments, leave comments. I would rather this be a discussion than me just talking. Although I'm quite happy to talk. I could talk for hours on this subject. So anyway, Gamers Nexus. Let's have a look at this. This is an amazing article. It's 10,000 words. It is well worth reading. It's absolutely such a fantastic article. The video is linked here. The YouTube video is linked here. You should definitely watch that. It's great as well. And I find myself during the launch, I don't know how you guys felt about the coverage on YouTube, etc., but I find myself, like I said before, a bit disappointed and gravitating towards written reviews again, which I haven't done in a very, very long time. But the written review from Gamers Nexus is amazing. Similarly, I read the one on an Antec the day it was released. This is a very, very good review as well. Absolutely fantastic. A lot of detail. Goes into a lot of the testing methodology, which I think is also lacking in a lot of the reviews I've seen on YouTube. The testing methodology just doesn't seem to be there. I mean, that's something else I could complain about quite a lot. These guys saying they've run benchmarks. It's like, well, to get to the point of validated, people use the term validated, where you're talking thousands and thousands of tests, like thousands of data points, not running a benchmark 4 times and taking an average. It's like, that's not validation. That's not how it works. So again, I would say slightly disappointed. And also I stand by my comment a minute ago that I think the R7 is a really good lineup. I think it's a very good product. For what it is. It's not a gaming chip. It is a productivity chip that allows you to game. So anyway, let's go through this. So let's get to the benchmarks, guys. Just to show you kind of thing I mean, encoding legacy test, rendering system. Where are we? Here somewhere. Conclusions. Here we go. So let's have a look at the conclusions. So I would totally agree with what an Antec are saying here, that it's basically a work in progress, and that we're just gonna have to wait. And this is a really interesting comment that they make here. Price for performance is still one of AMD's strong points. For the multitude of tests, the 499 1800X is able to match or beat the $1,049 i7 6900K. It directly translates to a 2 times in price performance. Intel still has plus on the ecosystem and chipset, but the argument is around how many users actually do what that extra I/O. So basically, I don't know why there's been quite a lot of kind of hate and fanboyism going around about Ryzen, because if you read through this article on an Antec, or if you read through the article on Gamers Nexus, I'll just go, where is there, here we go. Read down this, so where do we go? Here we go. That's quite good. Next. And you get to their kind of, here we go. Let's get to their conclusions. So this is versus 7700K. Go. What are they saying? Yeah, they're basically talking almost about the same thing, that we need to give it time to mature. Um, but they're not calling it a terrible product. I mean, both Gamers Nexus and Anantech, I think we can both, everyone can agree on, are, they're not idiots. They know what they're talking about. Are talking about, yes, this chip lacks in raw gaming performance. There's no two ways about it. It does lag behind the IPC of Skylake and Kaby Lake, but we always knew it was going to do that. AMD never said it was going to be it was going to beat Skylake. They never said it was going to beat a 7700K. This chip was always benched against Broadwell E, which is, well, I suppose you can say the chip is nearly a year old. I bought mine the end of last year, sort of October, my 6800K. But the before that, Broadwell's like a 2-year old architecture. So I think I'm I'm sorry guys, I'm quite frustrated about this whole thing, because I'm not trying to say go out and buy an R7 1800X. It's far from what I'm trying to say. Um, but I think we should get away from. Just trying to think how what's the best way to say this. We need to get away. We need to get away from this judging this product solely on its gaming performance. Okay, and I know a lot of people haven't been doing that, but I mean, push comes to shove, that's what people are interested in. That's what 80% of people are interested in, I would say. It's the only thing they're going to look at is the gaming performance and how it stacks up against Skylake and Kaby Lake. And so, okay, an 1800X costs like 500 bucks. Why would I buy one of those when I can spend $340 on a 7700K and get much better gaming performance? And to that, I would say, you're right. At the moment, no one could tell you to go and buy this chip to build a gaming machine. But again, that's not what this CPU is designed for. Again, we have to wait for the BIOS, and also for software engineers to catch up with Ryzen. I mean, even things as simple as Windows, the Windows power states, for instance, really don't work that well for Ryzen. They're not optimized yet. For instance, to get the best stability and overclockability out of Ryzen, you have to put Windows power setting into performance rather than balanced. And that's purely just because, through no fault of their own, people have been writing software for Intel for the past 10 years. There's been no reason for anyone to really take AMD seriously or to write code specifically for AMD. Yes, they may patch Windows, 6 months down the line or something for a system instability issue with the Shara or any of the other FX lineup, but this is brand new, guys. It's totally brand new. No one has done this. I can't think of the last time in memory when a company have designed a CPU ground up, like AMD have. And I think we should kind of look more at where they've come from as to where they sit versus Intel currently. And if we're going to look at where it sits versus Intel, we should be looking at the same price point roughly. So $500, the same price point, or core count would be a Broadwell E part. Versus a Broadwell E part, it has much better multi-core performance. It has similar single-thread performance, and it has largely similar, not identical, but largely similar gaming performance to a Broadwell E part. You know, kind of talking about its gaming performance consistently is quite annoying, and saying, well, why would I buy this when I can buy a 7700K? Because you can make the same argument for Intel's own internal pricing. You could say, why would I buy a 6900K when I can buy a 7700K for $700 less? So that argument kind of irritates me. I think I understand why reviewers make the comparison. If I had been sent a Ryzen sample, I would have tested it against. I don't have an i7 7700K, but I have an i7 4790K and an i5 6600K. I would have tested them against that just to see how they stack up in terms of IPC. But that would not have been the be all and end all, and I wouldn't have pointed to that as a largely a negative thing. I would have said it lags, but we expect it to lag behind. Um, uh, but I think a lot has been made out of this, and I don't really think it's that big a deal. I don't really think it's that surprising. I don't understand why people are surprised by it lagging behind, maybe sort of 10%. The fact that AMD have managed to improve their IPC by 52% is pretty impressive, and one of the things I would be thinking of. But at the moment, would I tell you to go out and buy an R7 1800X or an R7 1700X to build a gaming PC? No, I wouldn't. I might suggest you go and get an R7 1700 if you wanted to get into gaming and do a bit of streaming as well, because it looks like the majority of the R7 1700s will overclock to about 3.9 gigahertz on all cores, which gives it roughly similar performance to the 1800, to the 1800, which means that you're going to be pushing in GTA 5, for example, like 120 frames or so a second, and you'll be able to stream that no problem with the 8 cores, 16 threads. So I think there's an argument to be made. If anyone was to ask me now which Ryzen chip they wanted to buy one now, I would definitely say, buy a 1700. In fact, there was a really, really good video that Paul's Hardware did today. I think it's probably the video that he wanted to do at release, I would have thought. It was a bit longer, it was a bit more vloggy, and he was just going through the problems of overclocking all 3 chips and seeing what you can do if you do a bit of optimization and go through a bit of pain on quite a kind of early platform like AM4. And he got some pretty good results in terms of that internal stack between the R7 chips. It still lagged behind Kaby Lake and Skylake, but at the end of the day, if I was playing at 1080p on Ultra and getting 120 plus frames, I would be quite happy. And then still having the power in the background to either record or stream or do anything else. I think that's what you're paying for when you buy a Ryzen chip. So there we go, guys. That's the kind of moaning out of the way in terms of how I felt about the Ryzen launch. If you guys agree with me, or if you don't agree with me, drop a comment in the chat. But yeah, slightly disappointed to say the least. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong, guys. I suppose the next thing to talk about when it comes to Ryzen that I can't kind of defend is the general poor overclocking we've seen. Again, doesn't surprise me because this is an 8-core part. The more cores you add to a die, the harder it is to get them stable across the board. Although I feel AMD's advertising here was slightly dishonest, saying that, for instance, the R7 1800X boosts all the way up to 4.1 with XFR. Well, it does boost all the way up to 4.1 with XFR. But if you're not someone like me or another kind of, if you're not really into the minutiae of tech, you probably wouldn't have noticed that it's only going to boost one of your cores to 4.1 gigahertz for heavily single-threaded workloads. And in even the 3.5 turboing all the way up to 4 gigahertz, it's only going to turbo up to 4 gigahertz on maybe 2 cores, 3 cores. And that's, again, with a lightly multi-threaded task. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to getting one of these chips. And again, that XFR thing, that follows all the way down. It'll be the same for the 6 cores, 4 cores, etc. I would have thought. So yeah, slightly AMD kind of looking to show their product in the best light. Also, there was a lot of kind of, again, Gamers Nexus has documented this quite well, and in a fairly unbiased, uninflammatory manner. Steve's very good at this kind of thing. He documented his conversations with AMD and then pointed out why he wasn't going to do what AMD wanted him to do. So I think AMD had made the point on social media and then also on other things such as Reddit that possibly reviewers should be looking to benchmark their Ryzen chips at 1440p and 4K because they're making the argument that if you're going to buy an 8-core 16-thread chip, you want to be playing at those sorts of resolutions. Now, I don't strictly think that holds true, and also I don't agree with AMD's testing methodology there. We all know that if I benchmark something at 1080p and then I benchmark it at 1440p and 4K, so as I move the workload or the bottleneck from the CPU to the GPU, you're not going to see very much difference between CPUs on different platforms as you go up resolution. So I feel that he was right, and I feel that most reviewers were right doing their benchmarking of games at 1080p, because it really does show the difference between CPUs, not only on the same platform but on different platforms. So you are going to see the IPC and whether that's going to be a limiting factor. So again, I think it's possibly AMD asking people to do stuff that isn't necessarily the best thing to do for their product. And to be honest, they don't need to do stuff like that. They don't need to. They don't need to essentially nerf the competition. Like as I've said before, and I think if you read both Gamers Nexus and Antec's written review, you'll see that they're both not only both unbiased but also very fair. And you know, the Ryzen lineup comes out pretty well on both articles. But equally, they're not going to lie. They're not going to tell you that this is a great gaming chip, because it's not. It's an okay gaming chip. But if you're looking for those super high overclocks and pushing hundreds of frames at 1080p, and when I mean hundreds, I mean like 200, 250 plus. This chip, the R7, is not going to do that. But equally, it's not going to hold you back either if you're gaming at 1080p. I mean, I've got a 4K panel, and I've got a 1440p panel. And most of the time, I use my 1440p panel at 1080p, just because I'm used to it. And the 4K one stays at 4K, and that one's mainly for productivity and video editing. Occasionally, I'll game at 4K, but not very often. My kind of go-to resolution is 1440 for gaming. If I was gaming at 1440, I don't think having a 7700 or a 6700K would hold me back either. I know having a Ryzen chip wouldn't hold me back, but I know my 970 probably would become the limiting factor very quickly if I started cranking up all the settings, everything turned on at ultra. So I'd be wary of the stuff you read, basically. So that's the half an hour kind of up, guys. I've just been kind of. It feels like I've just kind of moaned, but I've been watching all this stuff for a week and being kind of quite grateful that I'm not a big channel, and that I haven't had to endure some of the. I mean, for want of a better word, hate that a lot of other YouTubers have had, and the attacks they've had from not only other tech tubers, like blatant attacks, which I think are fairly unprofessional, but also just dealing with vendors and the fact that this launch seems to have been fairly rushed, and dealing with the technology community, some of whom have been a bit, I don't know, maybe naive about the launch or what they felt the product was going to be. You know, in the past, AMD have promised the world and left us crying at the side of the car. This time, I think they promised an improvement, a really good improvement, and a complete architectural change, and a significant gain in IPC, and that's what they've delivered. That's all I can say. Looking at these reviews over the past 5 days, even given the issues they have with having no optimization in software, having no optimization really for BIOSes are still being optimized by vendors. So if you've got one of these new AM4 boards, I would suggest that you keep looking for fresh BIOSes and things like that. So I think AMD have actually delivered. I'm very interested to see what happens with the 6-core and the 4-core SKUs. I think that'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see if the overclock potential on those SKUs is higher. As we all know, it's easier to get a stable overclock the less cores there are. I'm thinking maybe the 6-core SKU might overclock a bit higher than the 8-core SKU. But I'm really thinking that 4-core, that R3, that 4-core, 8-thread CPU. As I said months ago when I started covering Ryzen, I said that was the chipset, the CPU to watch. And I stand by that. I think that is going to be the SKU that might be the thorn in Intel's side. If the performance scales the way it should scale across Ryzen, from the 8-core down to the 4-core, and you can get a better overclock. So if you can get that 4-core up to about 4.5 or maybe 4.6 gigahertz, I think then there's a very strong argument to be made about whether you're going to spend $300+ on an i7, or $250 on an i5, or sub $200 on an AMD R3 CPU that's got 4 cores and 8 threads. That's going to give you performance that's maybe lagging by about 5 or 10%. So that's the discussion. I think it's going to be interesting, and I think the second half of 2017 will be interesting. That being said, I will be buying an R5. I think the R5 looks like a really kind of sweet spot chip for content creators like myself. Again, I don't mind. If all I did and all I cared about was gaming, I wouldn't be running a 6800K. It's that simple. But if I can buy something that has the same multi-thread IPC, the same single-thread IPC, and similar performance across gaming and productivity that I'm getting now with this computer for a lot less in terms of raw cost, that'll make me very happy. I have no doubts that the R7, the R5, and the R3 will be very good at gaming. They might not hold the gaming crown like the i7 does, but put it this way, they're not going to be holding anyone back. You've got a reasonable graphics card. And that's what I think people need to realize. And I think when you're watching these reviews, guys, you should take them with a pinch of salt. I don't think anyone's lying, despite what some tech tubers are saying about other tech tubers. I don't think anyone's lying or anyone's deliberately trying to mislead, with the exception of the companies themselves. Maybe not lying, but they're definitely trying to show their own product in the best light. But I would say it'd be good if we could just watch the content and make up your own mind. Watch a lot of content. Don't take my word for this if you're watching this. Don't take my word for it. Go away and read these articles. Go away and watch as many Ryzen videos as you can. I mean, there's a few that I haven't watched because I just don't like the style. I would say go and watch Gamers Nexus video, definitely. Watch Paul's Hardware's latest video. It's very good. It takes you through overclocking. And I would say, for me, so this is going to sound very surprising, I would say go and watch Jay's 2 cents video. I'm not a massive fan of Jay. I don't generally like his style, but I think his video on Ryzen is very good. It's quite balanced. He completely sidesteps, as I said earlier, the issue of AMD versus Intel, and just looks at this new chip and gives his opinion. And does a very nice build, I have to admit. It's really, really sexy looking computer. So guys, that's it. I'm sorry none of you chatted. It would have been good to get some feedback, some conversation going. So that's it. That's what I think of Ryzen, guys. Like I said, I think it's a really good chip. I think it's a really good step forward for AMD. I think they've delivered a server-grade product at a consumer price that will let people do a lot more in their household. And that's it. There's not much more to say. So keep it real, guys, and thanks for tuning in. And I'll see you again on Wednesday to continue my game streaming. And if not, I'll catch you next week, and there'll be some new videos coming out soon. So take it easy, guys. Bye for now.